But it's a living statue.
We need to listen to this, please.
That needs to see his family. That needs
Moments
to
ago at the
out.
White House.
When you have a block leader on every single block, they can own the block as their own. That's something I learned from Jim Brown, from A Mayor I Can. We need to put curriculums for people who really came from the streets, not people who are just trying to set us up to go into a work system or prison system that applies to what people are really going through, which Jim Brown has created.
What about gun violence with all the debate about the Second Amendment going on?
The problem is illegal guns. Illegal guns is the problem, not legal guns. We have the right to bear arms.
President Trump has said that he favors stop and frisk. Are you guys discussing that? Do you think you can change the mind?
Yeah, we're gonna discuss. I didn't mean to put you on blast like that, bro. But it's definitely.
I'm open-minded. I'm here.
Mr.
I am
President, would you like him
open-minded.
to speak at one of your rallies?
He can speak for me anytime he wants. He's been a great guy. He's a smart cookie. Smart. He gets it. These two guys, Jim Brown, he's been doing this for a long time.
Is he a future presidential candidate?
Could very well be.
Only after
Could
it.
very well be. That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
We have a good, and the thing is, let's stop worrying about the future. All we really have is today. We just have today, over and over and over again, the eternal return, the hero's journey. And support, but best believe we are going to make America great. Now the thing is, another thing is black people have an issue with the word again, and I believe my feeling from that is because I'm going to go all the way Sigmund with it, because time is a myth. All we have is now, all we have is today. So the word again, it doesn't hurt us because of the idea of racism and slavery and different things. It hurts us because we need to focus on who we are now, today. I believe. So I actually brought some hats in that have a bit of a transition. I'm not trying to put you up there, smile a little bit. I made a hat that says "Make America Great," just that. But I would love to see at the Super Bowl, Trump wearing the "Make America Great" hat, Colin wearing the "Make America Great," and showing that we can bend a bit on this side, we can bend a bit on this side, and we can learn how to be malleable in the infinite universe that we are and the loving beings that we are. And we don't have to stick to all traditions. And we aren't a side. We are one unit. We are one country. We are one moment in history and time. We might have been here before, but right now, we're here together. And our greatest value that people have are other people. And we need to stop working on red and blue. It's like a gang again.
Let me ask you this question. You're in the Oval Office.
Okay.
How does it feel to be in the Oval Office?
Oh, it is good energy in this.
Any good energy? Yeah.
It's good.
It's a great place. Jim, how do you feel?
I feel good.
Yeah.
I truly feel good. I thank you too.
You're so respected. And what Kanye's doing has been incredible. All over the world they're talking about this. And I have to tell you, I had important meetings today with senators and with everything. Nobody cared. They wanted this meeting. This is the meeting. Is that right? I can say that to John. No, the others were good, right? But this is what they want.
Maybe only you would be here.
Well, it's my honor, Jim. I want to tell you, I've been a fan of yours for a long time. A long time. And nobody like you. Nobody like you. No athlete like you.
Well, you know why I'm here? I'm here to serve.
Yeah, it's really nice, man.
I'm not here to ask for anything.
Well, and you know, that's always been the way Jim has been for a long time. And he just wanted to help, and it's something special. Jennifer, did you have a question?
I guess, what do you feel about Tom Crisp or do that?
Well, we're going to look at it. I'm open to everything. Hey, look, I think it's a shame what's happening in Chicago.
What else can be done?
I'm in Chicago a lot, too. I have nice things in Chicago. You know that, right? And I hate to see what's happening. They're having the numbers of people being shot and killed, and it's not for this country. So they have to do something, and I am totally open. If we can do it a different way, Kanye, I'm totally open. But they have to do, I mean, we all agree they have to do something, that's
Mr.
for
President,
sure.
is it a law enforcement issue, a legislation?
Well, maybe it's a
legislative
combination
issue?
of both. Yeah, I guess it is, but I think it's probably a combination of both. And it's also a respect issue. They respect this guy, they respect this guy. That's a big thing. Right now, they're not respecting, let's say your mayor or let's say your leadership in Chicago, but certainly it shouldn't be happening. What's going on there should not be happening. Steve, go ahead.
What do you want this meeting to lead to in terms of president?
Honestly, from our standpoint, this was just set up to be a lunch of two people that I like, and I guess they like me. And we're gonna have lunch. We're gonna talk.
You said, I guess you know I love you.
I know.
Did
But
I?
I don't want to put you in that spot.
No, I'm standing in that spot. I love this guy right here. Let me give this guy. I love this guy right here.
That's really
Yeah.
Come here. That's really nice. And that's from the heart. I didn't want to put you in that position, but that's from the heart. Special guy. These two are special people. Whether you like it, whether you don't like it, they're special people. And I appreciate it. Jim, Kanye, I appreciate it. So let's go have some lunch. Okay? Thank you all very much.
All right, guys, let's go. Make your way out.
That was great. Great, John. Huh? Appreciate it.
Wow. Okay, I'm doing this for everybody who's watching us who turned their volume down. You can put it back up again. That
But
was
if you think you're going to
bonkers.
get a thoughtful play-by-play and political analysis, you're not, because that was an assault on our White House.
We're not, you can't analyze some of that stuff that was said. As we warned you at the top, there was a little bit of profanity. There was actually more than you heard. We were able to bleep some of it out, but there was, some of it did make it in there. That was crazy. That was
crazy.
bonkers. I mean, the things that Kanye said.
Can I go with my favorite?
Yeah.
How he talked about, he had a lack of male role models
Right.
in his life growing up.
Not a lot of male energy in his house,
The
he
reason
said.
he was drawn to MAGA was because of the male power.
When he put that cap on, he felt like a guy who could play catch with his
Because he didn't have that opportunity, which was stunning. You know, when he also said, you know, a lot of African Americans out there, they don't like the again. They don't like make America great again. And the reason being, if you are anything but a white male, historically, life wasn't better for you than it is in the current moment. It's stunning, Allie, that just took place. And even that the president would say, this was just supposed to be a lunch. That's an outright lie. I spoke to the White House myself several days ago, and I had said to them, like, guys, do you know how unpredictable Kanye is? And they said, guess what? So are we. This was absolutely a press opportunity.
I think that went down the way you would think, actually, a meeting between the president and Kanye West. Jim Brown was there, by the way. Kanye West said blacks really get caught up in the idea of racism over the idea of industry. His comment to fight police brutality is to release the love. And he said there should be in Chicago Yeezy ideation centers. That's going to
Yeezy, which is the namesake of his Adidas sneakers. He said that the MAGA sentiment is what gave him the balls to go for it and make so much money with Adidas. I'm just stunned across the board. You?
I thought we were going to have I thought they were going to have a conversation, which we would follow up on, in part on criminal justice reform, sentencing, and prisons, which is, by the way, a bipartisan, really important idea. That was mostly nonsense, but there were some things in there that probably are worth discussing. And the person who drew the short straw to join us to discuss this is White House correspondent for PBS NewsHour, Yamiche El-Sindor. There's a look on her face who says, "I've done some crazy stuff in the last 2 years, and this ranks right high up on the list of crazy stuff that we're about to analyze that conversation."
So can I just ask, because you do cover the White House, are you going to be calling Betsy DeVos, the education secretary, and asking her if we have a problem with our schools, not in our flawed education system, but if it's just too boring?
Yeah, they said there's no ADD, it's just people are bored.
School's too boring, because that is the narrative that the President of the United States just allowed in our Oval Office.
I will not be calling Betsy DeVos, but it was truly a bizarre moment, and mainly because what we see is a complete transformation of Kanye West. This was a rapper who's not only is his music really something of a rallying cry for African Americans, and he's really a conscious rapper, but this is also a rapper who said George Bush doesn't care about black people at the height of when people were criticizing President Trump's handling of Hurricane Katrina because so many African Americans in New Orleans felt abandoned by the federal government and the White House. Now you have him using specific stereotypes that have been overused about African Americans. He talked about the fact that black people have been using welfare, that there aren't fathers in the home. Of course, we know that those things are just patently false, and that Kanye West was really talking about all this stuff and really not making a lot of sense in front of President Trump. It was a truly bizarre moment.
Okay. But how do you think it's going to impact the president and or his supporters?
He says that Kanye's really good for him with African American voters.
I don't think that Kanye West is going to help him at all get any more votes from African Americans. I think the people that already like President Trump are going to look and say, look, Kanye West is someone that African Americans have championed, who say that this is someone who they've really, really looked at and said that this is the star of rappers. They're going to be able to look at this and say, hey, look, there are clearly some African Americans who like President Trump. Just look at what Kanye West said about him. So I think for his base, this will just make them feel better. But I think for African Americans, just looking on Twitter and getting some of the text messages that I'm getting, people were appalled that Kanye West did this. And black people are smart enough to know that just because Kanye West is an African American man, that doesn't mean that you're going to follow him and follow what he's saying. I mean, you can say that again with Herman Cain. There were people who said, okay, Herman Cain's an African American man. That means that black people are going to vote in droves for him. And we just didn't see that. So I don't think that this helps the president at all with African American voters.
But it's more than just having an unconventional approach or a different voice in the White House, because President Trump did say things on the campaign trail that some found offensive, but he said to some people in the south side of Chicago, the system is failing you, Democrats are failing you, what do you have to lose?
Said it in Detroit.
Some people said that was offensive, but some actually said, you know what? The system is failing me. Maybe I will give you a shot. But what Kanye West did right there was no clear message. I mean, this is someone who actually sat there and said, I have been diagnosed bipolar, which if we're going to address mental health issues, let's please do that. Let's not exploit someone in a position like that, because it is unclear what his message or his goal was at all there. I mean, to say we're not going to make America great again because time doesn't exist. This is our White House.
I mean, Stephanie, you've already generated more analysis of this than my brain is possible of doing. So I'm just going to.
It was too boring. I guess you didn't like.
No, it was fascinating. Even the president got stunned at one point, Yamiche, where he said he was sort of speechless. But
I will just, if I could say one really quickly, it is that African American conservatives are very frustrated with this White House because you have someone like Kanye West speaking for African Americans. There are hundreds, I would say, of black Republicans who would be happy to sit with the president and talk about the policies, talk about the economy, talk about it in a very coherent way, and make the case that African Americans should vote Republican. But the president isn't doing that. Instead, he's filling the White House with Omarosa, with Kanye West, with people who black Republicans say do not at all represent their needs.
What does that argument actually look like, Yamiche? If there were a real effort to speak to black Republicans and or black conservatives, right? There are black conservatives who may not identify as Republicans, but they hold conservative views. What would that conversation have looked like if that was what was actually going on? The president trying to say, let me appeal to more African Americans in a sensible way.
I think that conversation would look like, let's talk about the economy. Let's talk about whether or not African American employment is something that has helped not just in numbers, but has helped specific communities. Let's talk about those cities like Detroit, maybe like Chicago, not in a way to say that these are places where Democrats have failed, but say, let's look at the positive plans that we have for these cities. And it would really say, let me look at my cabinet. I want to have more African Americans employed at the White House, which means it's not just talking about diversity, it's actually including people of color in your White House. The president has not done that.
Yeah, and there was this conversation seemed to veer for moments down that road. There was a conversation of Kim Kardashian and Alice Johnson, who had been released from prison after a life sentence for a nonviolent drug offense. And then Kanye talked about somebody who he also thought was sentenced for too long. They talked a little bit about urban development in Chicago and bringing jobs in. So it had hints of going down that road, and then it just went off the rails.
Well, he also, it sounds like he wants to take this opportunity to talk about stop and frisk to the president. Kanye doesn't like it. The president articulated earlier this week he does. I just wonder how much the president listened to and what his takeaway will be. You know, Kanye was talking about great companies or brands, talking about Levi's. Levi's has taken a stand against Trump policies on gun control, on LGBTQ, on immigrants. So I'm going, Levi's, that's certainly not in the president's
I wonder
lane.
what Adidas is thinking about this performance and their relationship with Kanye West. So Yamiche, there was, again, I mean, we really thought, to some degree, I thought all day that the conversation we might have after this meeting would be about prison reform, sentencing reform. That's actually an idea that attracts people on both sides of the political
But
line.
rarely enough. It doesn't get enough support.
No, but that
and
would have
it's
been
fantastic that it is right now.
And I thought this would be a follow-up because Kim Kardashian was successful in getting that onto the agenda at the White House and doing something about it. So I thought they'd have that conversation, but that didn't happen either, Yamiche.
That didn't happen either, and I think what's really important is that we have to go back to this idea that we were really talking in stereotypes here. At one point, Kanye West said black people need to take more responsibility, and it was really the height of offense when you think of African Americans and all that they've bared in this country. You think about the fact that long before African Americans had the right to marry, long before they could keep their children from being sold by slave owners, long before they could vote, African Americans created communities and protected what they could of their families. And to see Kanye West say that African Americans need to take more responsibility, it's an old talking point that people have used over and over again. And it's really, in some ways, I would say inherently racist if you really want to put it out there. I think that black conservatives have said, yes, African Americans can take part of their future in their hands by voting for Republicans in a way that's really, I think, less offensive. They talk about owning businesses. They talk about getting small loans to get people to start businesses. They even talk about social issues. One thing that I know African American evangelicals at times bond with white evangelicals is over the case of abortion. But here what we had instead was Kanye West just using stereotypes and the president really shaking his head and going along with what he was saying.
What could be interesting, we rarely hear the president talk about gun violence. Prison reform is a Jared issue. It's not the president's. But in this case, knowing what's important to the president could make a move because we're talking about Chicago. And this is President Obama's hometown. And if there's one thing that we know Trump loves to do is to show up Obama.
Right.
And if Trump can get something done in Obama's backyard, that is exactly what he likes. And guess what? If it helps the people of Chicago, Illinois, great.
Yeah, well, again, that was on the table for about 45 seconds in that conversation.
All right, we're through here pertaining to what's going on. I want to weigh in on this conversation in all fairness pertaining to prison reform. Whenever I was going through the system, meeting up with various people that had various charges, of course, you don't have to be an Einstein to figure out just about everybody that you meet in prison will tell you they're all innocent. You and me know better. They're not all innocent. But pertaining to the non-violent offenses, I met one after another, after another, after another, and it was just as badly in the white race as it was the black race. And naturally, I'm not going to be exposed to the women pertaining to their charges, but I'm sure it's similar, black and white. But whenever you look at racial motivated motives, I believe, or the Windmill Ministries believes, that we have swayed just as much one way towards going to the far right as we are towards going to the far left. And the reason why I say that is because whenever you go around in this area, in the Northwest Tennessee area especially, because I have been into some really, really wonderful black churches in Atlanta, to where they actually used rap for leading people to Christ. I've been to churches to where they use tranquilist, a little bitty Muppet talking person to lead people to the Lord. I understand that probably a lot of people around here think that, yeah, oh, Juby, he's sure enough lost it, because I'm trying to lead a certain market pertaining to using stuff like superheroes, regardless whether it's Batman and Robin, regardless whether it's Spider-Man, regardless whether it be the Super Troopers, pertaining to NASA and going out of space, in which I want to say, regrettably, there was a bad accident last night that one cosmos and one astronaut almost lost their lives because of a tragedy that happened while trying to go back up into space. That is really, really sad whenever we cannot tighten the screws, cross the T's, dot the I's, and make sure everything is set up like it ought to be pertaining to sending our men and women off into outer space. Getting back to the racial interferences in our society. There's no doubt that the black race got the short end of the stick, not only by the Europeans that had done already come over here to America, but by their own race over in Africa. In other words, their own people was selling their own people out for slaves. There's no doubt that they rose up during the 60s and the 70s pertaining to your racial rioting that went on here in America, towards making statements that enough is enough pertaining to the black man having to sit in behind the bus and the white man being able to sit in the front. That only the black people could drink at this water fountain and the white people could drink at this water fountain. But I want to point out a certain thing pertaining to racial division. I guarantee you can go down to Memphis, Tennessee right now. I haven't found it in Atlanta, but you can go down to Memphis, Tennessee right now, which is less than an hour and a half drive from here. 2 hours at the most, depending upon how you drive. And you can walk into predominantly owned restaurants that are owned by black entrepreneurs, that are run by black waitresses and waiters, and a white family can come in, a man and a woman with 2 children, a boy and a girl, and they've been waiting now to be seated for 10 minutes, standing in line. And they're up to be seated. And all of a sudden, a black family can come in and they'll immediately go right to them and seat them, while the white family has to remain standing. The point that I'm trying to make is this, that I have seen it sway just as much on one side as I have the other, towards it being unfair and towards it being bigotry. This is a division that Satan has planted in people's hearts. It took me a long, long time to break out of this box that I was in, being raised up in a little community that didn't have good education, that had pathetic, barbaric, heathenistic, plagued practices that they was still conveying even in the 21st century. It took me a long time, and I guess the first time that I broke out of the box was in 1981, whenever I first went out west. And I wound up going to my cousin's house out at Plano, Texas, Jerry Wayne Madison. I had long hair down about my shoulders. My communication was filthy. The way that I presented myself was immoral. Everything about me was out of boundaries pertaining to the civilized society that he was associated with, especially with him having 3 daughters still living under the roof. Jerry took me in and tried to teach me, hey, you need to do this, you need to brush this up, you need to clean your act up over here, you need to do this, you need to do that. And keep in mind that even in Texas, they have characteristics that are very, very similar to Tennessee in a lot of your little small town suburban areas. But Jerry knew that because of me being raised up in this area, that I was as backwoods could get. And that's basically where we are today, regardless whether it's men wanting to bully women, regardless whether it's the black race being prejudiced against the white race, or vice versa, or allowing for Vietnamese, or Japanese, or Koreans, or Mexicans, or any other association to come over here. We are still living in primitive practice, persuasive, immoral ways. That these are the strongholds that need to be breaking. These are the reason why that we have pitfalls, not just here in America, but we have pitfalls all over the world. You can go over to Africa and find some of the most harsh conditions that you've ever laid your eyes on. You can go over to places over in the Middle East and even India and find some of the harshest conditions and the harshest primitive practices that you've ever laid your eyes on. Why is this? Because people was not willing to think out of the box. People was not willing to evolve. People was not willing to accept their failures and say, you know what? This didn't work. And because this didn't work, now we're going to try this. I've never had an alcohol problem. I've never had, per se, an absolute drug problem. I did mix and mingle a little bit whenever I was young, towards experiment, a little with this, a little with that. Of course, with me being basically an Evel Knievel, being all broken up and stuff, I was very, very familiar with the medical industry towards morphine, Demerol, Oxycontins, other types of narcotics that the medical industry has because of various pain relaxations that sometimes people have to have. And there's no doubt, whenever I fell off a 4-story building and broke both my legs, crushed both my ankles, crushed 3 vertebrae in my back, ruptured 2 discs, and broke both arms, if it wasn't for modern day medicine towards isolating me, I would have probably went off into a state of shock to the point that it would have been irreversible damage psychologically, emotionally, and every other way pertaining to what that I had went through, because my body had just got through going through severe trauma. And anytime a person goes through severe trauma, that's the whole purpose for modern medicine, is that we can preserve that person from going off into shock, and hopefully they can reemerge and come back again. Let's not change the subject here, but let's get back to what we're talking about. I was never asphyxiated on drugs or alcohol to the extent that a lot of people are. It is a severe, severe problem all over the country and probably all over the world. You and me both know it. One of the first things that they'll teach you in AA, in which I've been to AA meetings, Alcohol Anonymous as well as alcohol narcotics, is that one of the first signs of insanity is for a person to continue to keep doing what they're doing, but they're expecting a different result. It's the same way with society. It's the same way with the Homo sapiens. If you continue to do what you've been doing, you're going to continue to have the same results. This is where the church world comes in at. This is where spiritual intervention comes in at. Not so-called spiritual intervention, but real spiritual intervention. While I was out in Denver, Colorado, there was a gentleman out there by the name of Dennis Leonard that I really admired greatly, pertaining to how that he pulled a team of people together that worked on the 3 H's: habits, hang-ups, and heartaches. And what they would do, they would compartmentalize people, that if you have an alcohol problem, you need to be with this group. You got a drug problem, you need to be with this group. You got a perverted sexual problem, you need to be with this group. You got a immoral legal problem, you need to be with this group. If you're violent and can't control your anger issues, you need to be with this group. He would compartmentalize people and bring people together once a week, and you had to go through the 12-step program. Every time you completed a step, you got a button. I don't forget now the sequence of it. I don't know if it was a sequence of colors or size or what the deal was, but it was kind of like and I know this may sound strange or irrelevant to a lot of people, but he would give them a button or a coin. And once you fulfilled your task in receiving all 12 buttons, you have graduated from that class. And now it's time for you to move up into another class. And I watched how that they was doing that and rotating that again and again and again. And also, one of the things that I admired about him is that they had Wonder Bread, Twinkies, Kellogg's, different types of food distribution people that was in that same town, of the leftovers that they was going to throw away anyway, come by and donate to the church pantry, to where they could help people who was in bad need. I don't know how all that worked. I didn't get involved in that particular human resource all that much. The human resource that I got involved in was out in New Mexico, St. Elizabeth's shelter. I stayed there for about 6 weeks. That was their time limit of the longest that you could stay, unless you had some sort of doctor's permission giving you an extended stay. But even at an extended stay, I think the most that you could stay there was 90 days. They was very stringent in trying to help people. They had strict laws, strict bylaws. They checked everybody coming in. They made sure that you didn't have no alcohol on your breath. They took a wand, made sure you didn't have no knives, no guns, anything like that. Everybody was issued out a particular task, regardless whether you was working in the kitchen that afternoon, or you was cleaning the dining room, or you was making sure that all the waste cans was emptied. Everybody had a task, and in the mornings, everybody had to be out of the building to make sure that it wasn't considered a flop house by a certain time. I think it was 9 o'clock. It didn't matter what you done during that time that you was out, but you was not going to sit inside that building all day long just to flop around and watch TV. I think the opening hours in the afternoon began at either 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and of course usually supper was always around 5:30 or 6. But everybody had their own responsibilities. different churches would come by, and they would drop off food, and they would drop off things, clothes, and stuff like that. This is the way that you take a community and you build it back up. Just like Dennis Leonard with the 12 steps. I understand that a lot of people in this area are very, very confused with my message because of so much hypocrisy that has went out about me. That's fine. Because they talked about Jesus day and night too. Jesus wasn't welcome in his hometown neither. And I realized that some of the tactics that I'm using are not what you would consider traditional tactics, regardless whether it was a tactic of using a talking stuffed animal, or a tactic of using Spider-Man, or the Super Troopers. I realize that. But if God is leading me, just like he was leading people down in Atlanta of doing this, witnessing to people and singing gospel songs and rap, if God is in it, he will make it work. And it doesn't matter if it's on this level or down at this level. There's no doubt we still have a great deal of work to have to do here in America and throughout this planet to be able to get it in sync with Revelations chapter 6 verses 3 and 4 pertaining to utopia or peace upon to the earth, as far as a great revival or a great revolution. There's no doubt that we have a great deal of work to do before we're ever going to accomplish that. But I feel like, even though sometimes I think Donald Trump really puts he engages his mouth before he does his brain, and sometimes he sticks his foot into his mouth, he seems like he's got the right will or the right incentive towards wanting to help society towards getting us off of our rear ends and back on our feet. I don't know if he is qualified to be able to understand things the way that I do, simply because I feel like that I've got a great deal of street knowledge of traveling from one area to another area to another area, because each area is different. Each group of people is different. You got a completely different set of people up in your Mormons, Utah, Washington State, Portland, Oregon, Northern California. That's a whole different set of people in their thinking and how that they are accustomed of doing things. Matter of fact, it hasn't been just until up about last year that Oregon finally made it legal that you could pump your own gas. There was a lot of people that really didn't know how to flip the handle and read the dial and turn the knob and pump gas into their automobile. I think there's one other state, and it's out east. I think it's up somewhere around New Jersey or somewhere, that's still got it illegal for people to pump their own gas. But in different areas has different cultures. Different areas has different traditions. And I have been to the north, from the north, been to the north, been out east, been to New York, been to California, down in Homestead, Florida, whenever I was down in southern tip of Florida, down below Miami. I went into the Social Security Administration office because I had received a letter in trying to file for temporary disability. And I received this letter, and I went to the office, and everybody in there spoke a different language. I think it was Spanish. the majority of the people was from Cuba. I think I had to sit around for about an hour and a half before somebody could come to the Social Security Administration that is an American institution, before I could find somebody that could interpret my English to their language so that we could communicate together. Whenever you're down in the Miami area, it is full of people that has come from Cuba. And there is all kinds of businesses in that area that if you cannot speak their language, you may have troubles in understanding what they're doing or what they're wanting, or displaying what you're wanting to do. Same way up in New York with your Dagos and your Italians and different parts of the country. Yes, it's supposed to be the United States of America, but there is so much culture differences between the Cubans and the people over in the Northeast pertaining to Portland, Oregon, and Washington State. It's not even funny, pertaining to their work ethics, what they like, how they dress, the food that they eat, how they worship, how they talk, how they communicate, what they perceive as being value into their lives towards prioritizing stuff. Totally different. Two different places, even though we're in the same country. Even though it's not but about a 3,000 mile difference, a total different mindset. Total different. One of the saddest things that I have found whenever I was out in Kansas City, Missouri, which, once more, those people are a lot like the hillbillies. Once more, they're a lot like the Texans. Once more, they're a lot like the people that's from the Nevada area, where there's a lot of Indians up into that area. But one of the saddest things that I found while I was up in Kansas City, Missouri, up where my great cousin, our cousins are from, pertaining to the Jesse James gang, is that Missourians, the great Show Me State, was a split state during the Civil War. And so many people in the North supported the ambitions of the South. And so many people in the South, down around your Ozark mountainside, supported the ambitions of the North. And it was really strange because it was a culture difference there that you never would have thought would have existed. And there's other split states pertaining to the Civil War of people's way of thinking, their culture, what they eat, how they worship, what they believe in, what they're prioritizing, how they view other people, how they are willing to be transparent in certain things and do certain things out into the public. For me to come back to Northwest Tennessee and to be able to see and recognize these things, but yet no, I don't get no credibility for none of them. It really goes beyond hurting my feelings, especially whenever I'm still having to deal with primitive thinking, such as Donald Ridgway driving by, still trying to accuse me of me killing my brother. It rips and tears my heart completely apart whenever I hear these type of remarks, because not only do I know that I know the truth about my brother's death, but I know that he knows the truth, but he's still out promoting this type of evil hypocrisy. Not only is he promoting it, but others in the community are too as well. And if they're not actually promoting it, they're being entertained by it. They're sitting back and they're saying, yeah, right, it's a good laugh, ain't it? Because these people don't have no lives other than sit around, yik-yak, talk about other people's lives. The hypocrisy here is on a level such as I've never ever seen before in any other part of the country. At least they're true to themselves in Texas. At least they're true to themselves in Portland, Oregon. At least they're true to themselves in New York City. This bunch around here, they're some of the most hypocrite hypocrisy type people. They'll be preaching to you about you not supposed to be drinking no beer while they're holding one in their hands. I've never seen a group of people like this people. They are so blinded, and they need so many prayers, and they need divine intervention, because I really don't think a preacher, a teacher, an instructor, an evangelist, a theology of any sort is going to get them out of this mindset that they're in around here that they so-called call the Bible Belt area. And it's not just here in Northwest Tennessee. It's a stretch of it that goes all the way down through Memphis, all the way down to Little Rock, Arkansas, all the way down just north of Louisiana and Texas. And then if you go back this way, it hits basically southern Illinois, about half of Kentucky, all the way up into the southern part of Indiana. There's an area right here that they call the Bible Belt area that are some of the most confused, disoriented people that I have ever met in my entire life towards the Presbyterian, not liking the Church of Christ, not liking the Methodist, not liking the Assembly of God, not liking the Mormons, not liking other groups. I've never seen so much division and so much hate. It's not just prejudicism about one particular color race against another color race. It's prejudicism on every level that you can think of. And this is the part that is destroying America. This is the very thing that our enemy, our adversary, which is Satan, which is out to kill, steal, and destroy, this is the very thing that he's using a tool towards using against us, because he knows that if we ever become united we stand, divided we fall. If we ever become united in our way of thinking and what we want to achieve, we could and can accomplish anything. Anything. There is no barriers pertaining to those that whatsoever that ye shall bind here upon earth, it shall also be bounded in heaven as well. That if you so much as have the seed of a grain of a mustard seed, that you can say to thy mountain, be thou removed, and it shall be removed. So from this moment on, I'm going to say openly and publicly, Satan, get thence behind me. I command you to take your stinking, filthy, evil, demonic ways of thinking off of God's people. And I'm praying that we will continue to grow and manifest, and we will be able to understand our differences in culture, and we will be able to reform those that are reformable, that wants to be reformed, that we will be able to reform those regardless of what color, age, or denomination or affiliation that you may have come from. There are a certain group of people out there that, believe it or not, are doomed. They have went beyond the threshold of no return, either chemically or spiritually, economically, or financially. They're doomed. And until they're willing to come to the realization of what that they have done to themselves, you and me and everybody else, we could teach, preach, talk until we was black and blue in the face. And we're still not going to be able to get them out of that rut that they're in. Because obviously they have been given over to a reprobate mind, and God has allowed for them to believe a lie, in whatever lie that it may be, and they are basically damned. They're doomed. You have to understand that out of the percentage of 100, you're not going to be able to save them all. You're not going to be able to rescue them all. You're not going to be able to reform them all. There's only going to be a certain percentage amount of people, black, white, green, or yellow, that you're going to be able to reform and get them out of this mindset, or get them out of this chemical inducement, or this alcohol inducement, or this way of thinking. There's only going to be a certain amount of them out there that you're going to be able to basically save. The rest of them are doomed. How do you know when you're dealing with someone whether or not that this is a keeper or not? You'll know. You'll know. It won't take but two or three interviews, or 2 or 3 terms of working with that person, male or female, white or black. It won't take but just a couple times, and you'll realize, you know what? I can't help you. You're just going to have to go somewhere else, because obviously you're not willing to listen. You're not willing to be obedient. You're not willing to follow the rules. You're not willing to, I mean, you can play games with yourself and with God all day long, and basically you're only harming and hurting yourself. But whenever it comes to the extent that a whole society is doing it to each other, to the point that now you're hurting each other, including the innocent, then is whenever it's time for the adult class to stand up. Those that's already gotten their 12 buttons, and those that know how to use the proper tools, okay, it's time for them to step up and start being more than just listeners, but now let's start being doers. That's the problem that we have here in America, is that so many people want to talk about the problem, but don't nobody want to do nothing about it. And of course, whenever somebody like me comes along that's driving around with Super Trooper outfits on, and lit up helmets, and Spider-Man superheroes, we want to down them and degrade them and put them and shove them off into a corner because they're not like us. Well, neither was the person down in Atlanta that was using a stuffed animal of being a tranquilist towards leading people to the Lord. I don't know how to be a tranquilist towards taking my voice and acting like that I'm not really talking. I can't do that, but there are certain people that can. And if they're using it for the glory of God, let them. If they're taking rap and using it for the glory of God and they're saving people off the streets, let them. Quit degrading them and demoralizing them and demonizing them just because they're doing something differently that you don't like or you don't understand. That's the part that I'm trying to make today on this little message pertaining to the White House and what's went on of the rapper that was talking to the President of the United States pertaining to all the gun violence up in Chicago and everywhere else. People need to wake up. We are living in a society here in America that is beyond just being crucial. This is on the level of extinction. Because whenever God reaches a group of people that are unreachable, unteachable, undoable, as I have said before and I say again, if He cannot cure us, either individually or as a society, He will kill us. He's done it to past cultures before us, and he will do it again. And he will do it out of love, and he will do it in our own defense, because it is not right for us to wallow around in our own misery and continue to contaminate the innocent, such as children, that are in this cesspool. That's when you have to worry about the heavens opening. And that's whenever you have to worry about the ground opening. That's whenever you have to worry about retribution such as you've never seen before. I pray for Donald Ridgeway and his family every day. I pray for these people that go to the Alamo Baptist Church right down the road, and for the Methodist Church, and the First Baptist Church, and the Assembly of God Church, and the Victory Baptist Church, and Calvary Baptist Church, and Central Baptist Church, and First Baptist Church in Martin. I pray for these people because it's pretty obvious that they have been brainwashed. They have had their cake, and they have ate it too, to the point that they have become a bunch of spoiled, pathetic, Homo sapiens that, as long as they're in their little comfort zone and nobody's bothering them, they whine and cry and talk about things that goes on in Ethiopia. They whine and cry and talk about things that goes on in Jerusalem. They whine and cry and talk about things that happens pertaining to an earthquake or a hurricane or a tornado. But to see them actually get up and do something about it is slim to none. That's where we are here in the good old USA. And it's really, really sad. It's really, really sad that they're willing to cut off their own noses to despite their faces. It's the innocent. It's the children that are suffering right now. And I know that you know that I know what I'm talking about. Once more, good luck to all of us. If there's ever been a time that we really, really needed to merge, come together as a unit, and put our thinking caps on, and use our little smart aleck phones, and think about not necessarily our future, because if you're like me, you've already done lived the vast majority of your lives, such as myself, but think about their future. Think about where they're going to be 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road, after you and I are already dead and gone. We've already evaporated and expired from this society, and now we no longer have any type of influences up onto that generation. For God's sakes, put aside your selfishness and put aside your pride. And like I said, let's pull together in doing the right thing for the right generation. Shalom. Good luck to all of us. Biddy Joyce Jackson perished at the age of 62. She was a smoker, a tobacco smoker. She used to sneak around, not wanting her mother to know that she was smoking because of her nerves and the environment that she was subjected to. It costed her many years of her future. That was my mother.